Murder, death, and strange disappearances. What sent a beam of light from space? And who was behind the soft drink spokesman who took over TV and showed his butt live on air? The 80s don't get stranger than this. If you ever wondered why over-the-counter medicine is so hard to get into, from foil seals to cotton ball stoppers, it can all be traced to one of the most notorious unsolved mysteries in American law enforcement. The Tylenol murders were a series of suspicious deaths occurring in and around the Chicago area in 1982. The 7 fatalities had no pattern, but autopsies determined that all the victims had taken the pain reliever Tylenol just before they died. According to PBS, officials discovered the pills involved had been laced with potassium cyanide.
We've been receiving calls about once every 15 seconds. At Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's, we only have 3 poison lines.
The CDC lists potassium cyanide as a chemical asphyxiant that can kill with extreme swiftness. It's an incredibly adept chemical with applications in mining, jewelry making, and fumigation. According to Crime Museum, Johnson & Johnson reacted at once, releasing a massive public warning, halting production, and yanking 31 million bottles of Tylenol off the shelves. The investigation determined the tampering of pills occurred from different factories and only after they left for sale, but no suspect was ever identified. Congress made drug tampering a federal offense, but the police remain stumped. The case remains open, but Tylenol quickly changed their advertising.
Tylenol, safety sealed for your protection.
He was a victim of the Cold War. This is the most plausible theory behind the mystery of Vladimir Alexandrov. According to El País, Alexandrov confirmed the American hypothesis of a nuclear winter, a massive global temperature drop stemming from a nuclear war. It turned him into an overnight science superstar. Unusual for a Soviet scientist at the time, Alexandrov was allowed extensive international travel privileges to collaborate in the United States and Europe. Things unspooled in 1985 when Alexandrov, then 47, traveled to Spain. He gave a talk in Cordoba and then moved on to Madrid, where he had a meeting with Soviet officials. Journalist Andrew Revkin documented that the meeting left Alexandrov so shaken he went on a drinking bender. Revkin confirmed that Alexandrov was habitually inebriated. And then Vladimir Alexandrov vanished. No note, no body. According to El País, the conspiracy theories were vast, like the KGB killed him for becoming too Americanized or the CIA killed him for being a Soviet spy. But the scientist disappeared so completely that nothing made sense. The dissolution of the USSR in 1991 led to no opening of records on Alexandrov, and a 2016 article at pulitzercenter.org concludes that Alexandrov is dead, but no one knows for sure. Scientific American states, it's not aliens. In fact, it is never aliens. But no list of unsolved mysteries is complete without them. The Rendlesham Forest incident is the UK's most famous UFO legend. In 1980, American soldiers stationed at RAF Woodbridge reported seeing unidentified lights in the sky descending into the nearby Rendlesham Forest. And according to the BBC, the same thing happened 2 days later. Locals then reported a pair of suited men appearing and asking if anyone had seen anything.
Do you want to report a UFO? Over. Negative.
According to the BBC, the incident slipped into obscurity until 3 years later, when the famously sensational News of the World tabloid ran a story based on a real USAF document that a UFO landed in England. The story gained more traction when The Guardian reported on Rendlesham in 1985. As the BBC describes, the locals scoff at the idea, and that the beam from the Orford Ness Lighthouse was likely the light source. But why spoil the fun? There's a UFO walking trail at Rendlesham, and the mystery is the source of several books, even a movie. But what exactly happened that night in 1980? No one knows. Natalie Wood was a Hollywood rarity, a child star who became a box office smash as an adult, with roles in Rebel Without a Cause and West Side Story. According to IMDb, Wood had 3 Golden Globe wins and 3 Oscar nominations. But like Marilyn Monroe before her, Wood's death is so fraught with theories and conspiracies that she's possibly more famous for dying than acting. According to the Los Angeles Times, in 1981, Wood, her husband, actor Robert Wagner, and their friend, actor Christopher Walken, took a nighttime cruise on a yacht. Then Wood, who had been drinking and could not swim, vanished. Wagner radioed in his wife's disappearance at 1:30 a.m., and her body was recovered later that morning. Town & Country states that Wagner found that both Wood and the dinghy attached to the yacht were missing. The coroner found bruising on Wood's body consistent with a fall, and her death was listed as accidental. But the case was reopened in 2011 after new details emerged and a new witness came forward in 2018. In 2012, The Guardian stated that Wood's cause of death was changed from an accident to drowning and other undetermined factors. No one has been formally charged as of yet, but 41 years later, the mysterious death of Natalie Wood remains unsolved. On November 22, 1987, Chicago was left bewildered when the nightly news on WGN-TV was suddenly replaced by a figure wearing a Max Headroom mask. For background, Max Headroom was an icon of the 1980s. The Verge describes the character as a dystopian deconstructionist critique of corporate greed. The figure remained silent and merely bobbed on screen for 25 seconds before station engineers re-established control. Then it happened again. Chicago area PBS affiliate WTTW-11 was hacked 2 hours later by the same figure, who now spoke in a stream of consciousness ramble through a voice distortion effect for 2 minutes. Along with the gibberish, the hacker signed off by giving viewers an eyeful when he mooned the camera and was spanked by a woman with a fly swatter. The Max Headroom hack has gone down in history as one of the most infamous signal piratings in American television, augmented by the fact no one knows who did it. Atlas Obscura describes how in 2010, a Reddit user went into astonishingly exact detail on why the hack was performed, claiming that 2 unnamed techies wanted to demonstrate the vulnerability of American technology. The claims made were never confirmed. On December 12, 1985, 248 American soldiers of the 101st Airborne Division, nicknamed Screaming Eagles, died in Newfoundland, Canada, when their plane, Aeroflight 1285, fell from the sky and crashed. The crash killed everyone on board, including the 8 crew members. The Fort Campbell Courier reported, "The crash was the largest single-day tragedy with loss of life in Screaming Eagle history." Even as families mourned and communities rallied, the Canadian Aviation Safety Board rushed to figure out how the plane, not 1,000 feet off the ground, suddenly crashed. There was no indication of general wrongdoing concerning Aeroflight 1285, and the mystery lacks a good theory that everyone accepts. According to the Fort Campbell Courier, the crash was officially blamed on ice buildup due to the notoriously harsh Newfoundland winter. But the CBC claimed that an investigator was so unconvinced of those findings that he filed a minority report. A similar article from the Cape Cod Times stated that an explosion in the cargo hold actually took Aeroflight 1285 down. And some reports say that the flight originated in the Middle East, leading some to raise questions of terrorism, UPI noted. The cause remains a mystery. How does a man get shot dead in broad daylight, a crime witnessed by 60 people, and no suspect gets caught? All-out criminal Ken Rex McElroy terrorized the people of Skidmore, Missouri. According to local affiliate Fox 2, the man was suspected of theft, livestock rustling, burglary, arson, assault, and child molestation. He impregnated a 12-year-old girl, and to avoid statutory charges, married the girl after an intimidation campaign against her parents. As Fox reports, intimidation was how McElroy got away with 20 charges against him, with crimes going back into the 1970s. According to Bustle, McElroy successfully and suspiciously appealed a murder conviction in July 1981. He then died in a hail of bullets. No one called an ambulance. No one rushed to help. No one saw a thing. The case and the wall of silence around the incident made headlines. Bustle alleges that McElroy earned the hatred of Skidmore so completely, not only did the entire town conspire to kill him, people refused to point fingers. The New York Times reports witnesses admitting seeing the shooting occur but not the shooter, and the people of Skidmore have no desire to see the case progress.
Who pulled the trigger?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Would you turn in the person who did it?
Starting in 1987, an unknown man in a black balaclava started a serial spree of child sexual assaults, abductions, and at least one murder across the city of Melbourne that has kept Australia on edge ever since. Dubbed Mr. Cruel by the press, the police identified only a very basic modus operandi. Each victim was monitored before the attack. Abducted victims were later found by electrical substations, leading to the assumption Mr. Cruel worked for the Power Authority. According to the Herald Sun, each of the 12 attacks was careful and unhurried. A conscientious and self-aware criminal, Mr. Cruel even went so far as to provide false leads. While surviving victims were able to provide some information, the Herald Sun details how each was gagged and carefully blindfolded, limiting their abilities. In 1991, the attacks suddenly stopped, leaving police no closer to solving the case. According to the Herald Sun, 7 suspects were identified by law enforcement, but no progress was made on any. With no new leads, the task force assigned to Mr. Cruel disbanded in 1994, and in the decades since, some sources question if Mr. Cruel is still alive. Arguably the most famous missing person of the decade, Toledo, Ohio resident Cynthia Anderson was a stereotypical church-going good girl. On an ordinary day in 1981, she disappeared into thin air. she hasn't been seen or heard from since. According to the case file with the Ohio Attorney General, Anderson, a legal secretary, had prepared the working day for her superiors. The radio was on and an unfinished romance novel was on her desk. The Charlie Project states that Anderson's purse and keys were missing, but her locked car was still in the parking lot. There was no sign of a struggle, and the office door was locked. The Toronto Blade notes calls to the office started going unanswered at 10 a.m. She had also place-marked her book at a scene involving an abduction by knife point. The strongest clue was that Anderson was subject to a series of disturbing phone calls and eerie messages. Parade reveals that the words, "I love you, Cindy," signed by GW, had been spray-painted on the opposite wall of her office. The stalking behavior unsettled Anderson so much that an alarm buzzer was installed at her workplace. It was never used. Police were stumped. According to the Charlie Project, suspects were pursued, including convicted felons, but to no avail. Anderson was gone. The case remains open. According to a Plumas County News retrospective from April 2018, the signed message, "I paid the price of your love, and now I bought it with 4 people's lives," is considered all but a confession to the Keddie cabin murders, a brutal family slaying in 1981. 2 suspects were even identified, but the case still went cold. ThoughtCo reports that the bodies of Glenda Sue Sharp, her son John Sharp, and his friend Dana Wingate were discovered killed in a cabin in the small Northern California community of Keddie. Missing was the Sharp daughter, 12-year-old Tina, whose remains were found in the woods 3 years later. Found at the scene were the murder weapons and, astonishingly, the 3 other children who went the entire episode unharmed in another room. Plumas County News has authorities surmising at least 2 perpetrators, but a piece published a week earlier says as many as 6 could be involved. Authorities looked at Martin Smart, who wrote the quotation, and Severin John Bobade for connections. As ThoughtCo observes, police infighting froze the case so thoroughly that it remains unsolved to this day. The Sacramento Bee noted new technology is shedding some light, but both Smart and Bobade have since died, dimming hopes for justice. In a 2016 interview with People, survivor Sheila Sharp said she just wants answers. Sharp said in the newly found evidence,
"I actually put in my mind that I'll probably go to my grave, that it will never be solved."
Sometimes a criminal case becomes an enduring mystery because the facts seem so ludicrous. In 1989, the Fukushima authorities in Japan suspected Naoki Kano died in a ladies' room septic tank of hypothermia in a failed attempt to watch women in the restroom. While this would seem like an extreme peeping Tom case, the surrounding facts don't add up. According to Day News, townfolks immediately came to Kano's defense when police announced the predatory theory, saying he was a father and an apparent pillar of the community. But no one knows how he got into the tank in the first place. The C-shaped industrial pipe was so cramped that the 26-year-old Kano was wedged inside. Kano was found on his back in a fetal position, shirtless, holding a neatly folded jacket to his chest with no outward injuries. He would have been looking up into the urinal, and he ultimately ended up freezing to death. Dissatisfied with the official findings, 4,000 locals demanded the case be reinvestigated. No further clues were found, and no suspects were ever identified. The case remains cold. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Grunge videos about your favorite unsolved mysteries are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.